if you're lucky. Yeah, that's way too bright.
It is bright. What do you want to do?
Who's in charge of that?
So bright.
Who's got the pool on that light?
So bright, Daddy calls him son.
I'll handle this. All right, Thug.
Right. Yeah, because Chip is so thug.
He is. When I think Thug.
Yeah.
Am I wrong? Is it not extra bright? You want a white balance? You want a white balance? The good looking one.
There you go.
Did you get a funny one? Yeah. Why do I look so fat? Oh, cuz. That's beautiful. It's
The
beautiful.
camera's slimming.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Here, tell you what. Oh, wait, that's. Send it to that address. I have something for you also.
Is it candy? It's not candy, I don't want.
I have something for you.
Is this a gag thing? Is this like gum that turns my mouth black?
I don't want.
You just carry this around with you all the time?
Yes.
Can we use this as our white balance?
Yes, you can. Aren't they awesome? They're awesome cards. It says nobody cares.
You go through a box of those a week.
Yeah. Show them the card.
I said I would ask for it because I know you, so it's okay.
What, we need a translator?
Yes. We're not as smart as you are, so you have to talk down to us. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, me either. Nobody cares.
You know what, you just giving me a weapon. Every time I see you,
My daughter, every time she texts me something like, hey, Dad, I just got a new job, I write back NBC. It's short for nobody cares. Some, what the hell is going on in here now? I know, but I'm not that bright. And sometimes I take the NBC logo and I send that to her.
Right.
She likes that a lot. She writes apps and codes stuff. I don't understand it, but some kind of computer stuff. She works with computers. In Phoenix. Yeah.
How's the weather there? How's the weather there right now?
Awesome. Although, because I can only visit her in August, because that's when we go.
Oh, that's brutal.
I was out there at the end of August. It was just, we went hiking. She likes to hike.
115.
Yeah. By the time we got to the top of Smith Mountain,
that was too bright for a student. He's going to go hiking.
look, my daughter and her boyfriend, I am not going to look weak in front of my daughter's boyfriend. There's just no way in hell that's going to happen. So I hauled my ass up that mountain in 117 degree heat. I called for a medevac.
Except you said I'm calling in some political favors.
Right.
To get a helicopter in
Right.
here.
Look at the National Park Service.
Little did they know it's a medevac.
Yeah, I just gotta get the hell out.
Oh wait, I'm urgently needed on Capitol Hill. Here comes the helicopter. I came out. It was bright.
It was,
It was scorching.
yeah, it was a little bright.
It was retina burning bright.
You good, Chip?
Check 1 2 1 2 3 4. Check. Good.
Join you guys.
would go really well in here. Bill, I saw you outside today. You walked across and made the pictures of the clouds. I was right next to you with the video. I was just, yeah. I was rolling video over there. I got to make sure if you walking through my video, like, one per where? One per lunch? Back over there. I got a camera on a tripod back there. Hey man, multimedia. Please, when you say the word multimedia, you have to do this. I think that's right. Yeah, no. I can't talk to him. Just not talking. It's not high. 360 Fusion from GoPro. We're testing it at Nikon Rotate. And we're about to get those. The Osmos. We're about to get ourselves a Bill Clark. It doesn't have to be a Bill Clark, but it just has to be someone who smokes weed with Stephen Colbert. So as long as that's us, we'll find that. This is still, the Theta is still easier to use. The problem is the chip is like half the size of the chip. Especially at low lighting. It's still a challenge here for this. Hi there. Just put one right out here in front of the light. Yeah. Looks like somebody's brain's still on furlough.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Not only did we get the government back up and running yesterday, we also checked off a few more items that need to be dealt with here in the next month or so. The 6-year reauthorization of the Children's Health bill. We had several Obamacare taxes, 2-year extension of a delay of the medical device tax, of the Cadillac tax, and also we were able to get Section 702 approved. So we've been checking various items off on the to-do list. This week we're going to confirm the chairman of the Fed, the new Secretary of Health and Human Services, and Ambassador Sam Brownback.
Well, thankfully, the Democrats realized the mistake they made in shutting down the government over this unresolved issue of DACA, but they've kept additional hostages, and those hostages are the money that should be appropriated for the rest of the fiscal year to support our military and to give some predictability to our nation's national security. And also, they're holding hostage the money that the House passed, $81 billion for disaster relief for the victims of Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Harvey, as well as the wildfires out west. I hope that Democrats realize that we are serious in working on a bipartisan solution to the DACA situation. The Majority Leader has said that we'll take that matter up in a fair and open process, and we will. But in the meantime, they need to release these other hostages that they took on the DACA issue, and to let them go so we can fund our military and so the federal government can live up to its responsibility in dealing with the victims of Hurricane Harvey and Hurricane Maria.
And we're anxious to be back at work and taking on the agenda that we need to be working on for the American people. This was totally a manufactured crisis on the part of the Democrats, which ultimately led to, their brinksmanship ultimately led to a government shutdown. But their obstruct at all costs pattern, I hope, will change. If you look at what we've been dealing with this last year, whether it's confirmations, whether it's tax reform, whether it's federal spending, it's just obstruct, obstruct, obstruct. And that doesn't do anything good for the American people. Fortunately, the American people, while all this was going on, were continuing to get up and go to work and take care of their families and pay their bills. And they're going to have more money to pay their bills because of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which passed recently. If you look at what's happening across this country, there are 200 now plus companies that have delivered bonuses and pay increases and benefit increases to over 2 million people in this country. And if you look at people's overall satisfaction with the state of the economy, according to the Wall Street Journal NBC poll, it's at a 17-year high. You have to go back to 2001 to find a time when 69% of the people in this country, across all political groups I might add, Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, are satisfied with the state of the economy. And that's only, I think, stands to get better as the effects, the positive benefits of tax reform in the form of better paying jobs and higher wages continue to make their way out into this, across this economy. And if you look at people's perception of the tax bill, in just 1 month, it's improved by 21%. And that has a lot to do, again, with what's happening out there in our economy and the things that we predicted would happen if we could work together in a way that would produce a tax reform bill that was good for jobs and good for growth. I hope the Democrats will come to the table and join us. We have some big challenges. Senator Cornyn talked about immigration. It's not going to be easy. But if you've got willing partners and who are there in goodwill and trying to make good things happen and get results for the American people, we can succeed. And I hope the Democrats will work with us to make that happen.
I'm very glad to see the government up and functioning again. This idea of shutting down the government over the issue of illegal immigration was a strategy that could never succeed. But I can understand why the Democrats wanted to change the topic, because the topic, when you're focused on jobs and the economy and people's lives, is a topic that has been good for the Republicans and good for America because of what we've done with the tax reform, tax relief, tax reduction, tax cut bill. People in Wyoming who I've talked to, and I was answering the phone this past weekend during the shutdown, happy with the economy, happy with the jobs, the bonuses that people are receiving, the 2 million new jobs since the beginning of last year, the 2.2 million people who have received increases in their wages. All of this is a very important component of this, and it's going to continue as money is coming back from overseas. This double taxation system that existed previously has now been eliminated. You saw Apple saying they're going to pay taxes on $38 billion in taxes to repatriate money that's been overseas, invest $350 billion in America, hire 20,000 new workers. That's helping people every day all across the country. And around the world, people are looking at this and saying, what are we going to do about it? They're trying to play catch up with the United States in our America First economy. In Australia, one of the economic ministers has said that they're looking at trying to lower their tax rates just to try to be competitive with us, because they are losing their competitive advantage that they had previously because of what we've done and passed a tax relief legislation that every Democrat had voted against. So we're going to continue to focus on paychecks and prosperity, and we would ask the Democrats to join with us in things that really focus on the jobs and the economy and improving the lives of the American people.
I think another thing that happened this week is significant numbers of Democrats in the Senate are finally talking about what they need to do to get their side on the side of debating these appropriations bills. We've now gotten into almost 10 years of no debate on the appropriations bills, one big bill at the end, to the point that in that culture, apparently even bills that have nothing to do with the spending bill become a reason to shut the government down. I think Democrats and Republicans would like to see a chance to have a say beyond just a few people deciding what the ultimate bill looks like, to have a say on how we spend our money, how we set our priorities. I talked to a number of Democrats yesterday who want to rethink where their side has been on this issue, and there's no better time to start than the next appropriations bill, to not have this, to have it as our goal for the next year, not to have a big bill at the end, but to have these bills come to the floor, get debated, face every amendment any member wants to make, and wind up on the president's desk one or two at a time rather than all at one time.
As the leader mentioned, one of the policy items got a little bit overshadowed in the debate on government funding was the CHIP reauthorization, a 6-year full reauthorization of CHIP. That's the longest term reauthorization that program has seen since it was created. In Colorado, that means 76,000 women and children will receive health care thanks to the full reauthorization of the CHIP program. To talk a little bit more about the impact the tax bill has had, the IMF has stated that global growth forecast will be increased in part because of the U.S. tax cut bill that passed, was signed into law. Today it was announced that one business will open 400 new locations, hire thousands of new people, increase salaries by 10%. Another will be paying thousands of dollars in stock to its employees. If that's Armageddon, it's pretty far off from, I think, what the rest of us think Armageddon really is.
Yeah.
How does the plan going forward to put an immigration policy bill on the floor in February differ from what you had said at your year-end press conference right before Christmas, that you intended sometime in the early year to put an immigration-related bill on the floor?
Hardly at all. The conversations I had with the moderates in my conference led to my decision about how to handle that in a fair and open process, which I described on the floor yesterday. If the government is open on February the 8th, we will have a fair and open process that will give a variety of different points of view an opportunity to express themselves. And I think, as all of you know who cover the Senate, whoever gets 60 votes wins. I mean, that's the way you have an open process in the Senate. And that's the way we'll deal with that issue, provided the government is still open. And that's the understanding I had with my moderates. And I want to echo what Senator Blunt had said. What we saw here was the moderates on the Democratic side discussing their discomfort with the place they had been led with our moderates, and that led ultimately to opening the government up. I think that was a constructive process. The Senate operating the way the Senate does, 51-49. Most of the things that we will be doing, we'll have to do on a bipartisan basis. Nancy?
What do you say to those dreamers who are worried that you won't keep your word and bring a bill to the floor? A lot can go wrong between now and then.
I intend to keep my word. Yeah.
Mr. Leader, you said before this debate, this shutdown started, that you weren't sure where the president stood and you were waiting for him to tell you. Are you clear on where the president stands now?
The president's been in discussions with a number of people, Senator Cornyn among them, about his approach to this issue. And we'll see whether later they decide to make an announcement on that subject. It wouldn't be up to me to make that announcement, but up to them. Manu?
The president on a number of occasions, including today, has raised concerns about the FBI today, about not turning over certain text messages to Congress. But he's also criticized the deputy director of the FBI and said the reputation's in tatters. In any way, are you concerned about his undermining this institution? Should he back off this criticism?
Yeah, I don't have any observation about that. Yeah.
You often say you want to see an outcome or a result, not just votes on an issue. Do you believe this Senate debate that's probably coming up will drive the debate, or will the ultimate result come from the group of deputies that Senator Cornyn is part of, or some other leadership discussion?
I'm not sure I'm following you. To get us to a result on what?
On immigration.
Yeah, well, we'll see. You know, we're going to have a fair and open process that will give everybody an opportunity to participate, and we'll see. But I want to get back to one other aspect of this. We need to finish up the CAPS deal. We need to figure out how much we're going to spend, not only for this year, but for next year. We have lingering supplemental appropriations related to the hurricanes. Those talks need to be completed well before February the 8th, because we'll need to move that across the floor in both the House and the Senate. So there's much work to be done. I would have preferred February 16th because of the time involved in bringing these other issues together, which then would allow us, presumably, to get to the immigration debate. That's part of the discussion over how we settle all of the issues that are extant. We've checked off a number of them that I listed that are now out of that discussion, but there's still important items left. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And I want to thank my colleagues, Senators Durbin, Murray, Stabenow, and Brown. You'll hear from each of them seriatim, as they say in Brooklyn. Okay, as you know, yesterday, the Senate passed a continuing resolution to reopen the government, provide a 6-year reauthorization of CHIP, and Leader McConnell and I were also able to agree on a path forward for legislation to protect Dreamers. The Republican majority now has 16 days to prevent the 800,000 young Dreamers from being deported. Democrats are going to be working as hard as ever to get a bill that will pass the Senate. But the pressure is on Leader McConnell and the moderates, particularly the Republican moderates. The clock is ticking. Leader McConnell made a promise, not just to Democrats, but to Republicans as well. We expect him to keep his word to the body, and I was glad to hear that he reiterated it a few minutes ago right here. We now also have 3 weeks to conclude other important work, each equally as important as the next. On the budget, we must lift spending caps for defense and urgent domestic priorities. Just as our military needs the resources it requires to do the tough job we ask of them, we have critical issues to address here at home, and you're going to hear about some of them from my colleagues. It includes making the necessary investments to fight the scourge of opioid addiction, which has a stranglehold on so many communities across the country. In the light of the Trump administration's constant abdication of leadership when it comes to the opioid crisis. A lot of committees, a lot of talk, no action. It is important now more than ever for Congress to take immediate action. Not only has the President failed to nominate someone to head the Office of National Drug Control Policy, guess what? This administration, which talks a big game about opioids, just proposed cutting the agency's budget by 95%. That's one of the most destructive contributions that the President has made to combat the opioid epidemic, and the effects of this broken promise ripple across the country. We also have to honor the promise made to over 1 million pensioners who contributed to and earned every penny of their pensions. You'll hear about that later. We have to fund community health centers and other important health programs that have lapsed. You'll hear about those. And we also have to do more for our brave veterans to get the kind of quality health care they deserve. They didn't wait in line in Iraq and Afghanistan. They shouldn't be waiting in line here. And, of course, we have to pass a disaster relief package that addresses the needs of all our states and territories fairly: Texas, Florida, Louisiana, California, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, and the western states that are plagued by fire. Unfortunately, on every one of these important issues, the President has been impossible to pin down, or he's been completely absent. President Trump's inability to negotiate with Congress is what caused the 3-day government shutdown from which we've just emerged. It's causing the fact that we're not making more progress on these issues. Our Republican leaders don't want to go ahead on their own. They're afraid of President Trump. They want to know what he'll do, but he doesn't tell them to do anything, and he usually tells them, you do it yourselves. We get paralysis. Now, if we're going to get all these things going, the Senate is probably going to have to work its will on its own. We're ready. The American people are clamoring for our two parties to work together and get these things done. The bipartisan group yesterday was a glimmer of hope that that might happen, and I'm encouraging them to move forward. After years of partisanship and strife, during which Republicans hardly attempted to compromise, if we're going to finish all these important tasks at hand, we have to move forward in a bipartisan way. Senator Durbin.
Thank you very much, Senator Schumer. Some people look at a donut and just see the hole. I'm not one of those people. Where are we today when it comes to DACA and Dreamers as compared to last week? Significant positive things have occurred. Yesterday and over the weekend, a significant group, a bipartisan group of senators came together and committed themselves to moving forward with the DREAM Act and other immigration issues. There are more speaking in favor of the DREAM Act today than there were a week ago. We've secured a guarantee on the floor from Majority Leader McConnell that for the first time in 5 years, we will finally debate and vote on immigration and DACA issues. Now we have a process. We can finally resolve the fate of hundreds of thousands of dreamers who are American in every way but for a piece of paper. The final decision on whether this idea becomes a law, though, still rests in the hands of the Republican leaders in terms of what they bring to the floor. We have a clear statement from Senator McConnell as to the process that we will follow, the level playing field, the open amendment process. We don't have a similar statement from the Speaker of the House, and he is in complete control of the measures that come before the House on the floor. If we are going to have a bipartisan solution, we need the leaders of the House and Senate to come together and agree that we have a path moving forward. We now have 16 days to work with Democrats to produce legislation. Republican Majority Leader has 16 days to work with Democrats to produce legislation that can pass the House and the Senate. Now, I might add that there is a parallel track here of the whips or number twos, whatever our characterization is at the moment. We have been unable to meet this week because the House is in recess. I stand ready and willing to attend any meeting that can be productive and constructive to move forward on this issue. I've been waiting 17 years since I introduced the DREAM Act for this day. There's a lot at stake, not just in terms of my political investment, but even more important, the lives of these young people and their family. They deserve the opportunity to be part of America's future.
Senator Murray.
Well, thank you. You know, the bare minimum for a party in control of the Senate, the House, and the White House is keeping the government open. That is the absolute bare minimum. So it's good that Republican leaders were able to keep the lights on for a few more weeks. To be very clear, we have a lot more to do than the bare minimum. So I'm glad Republican leaders have committed to working with us to deliver on some of the challenges facing the families we represent. But in the coming weeks, people are going to be looking for action and true bipartisan work, not just words. As Senator Durbin just talked about, Democrats and Republicans agree. We need to finally pass legislation to protect our dreamers who have known no home but America and who live in constant fear for their future. Republican leaders made a commitment on this. We're going to be holding them to it. We all know we need to increase investments in health care and education and other domestic and defense priorities. That's something Speaker Ryan and I were able to do in 2013, and I am confident it can be done again. And I just want to focus on two important issues within that. Democrats and Republicans agree we need to do more to fulfill our promise to the brave men and women who served our country. Because right now there are far too many veterans around this country who are facing long wait times for health care and barred from the critical caregiver program because of when they served or sleeping on the streets. And now that this Republican shutdown has ended, there is no reason we should not be able to work together to address that quickly. Democrats and Republicans also agree we need to make sure that patients and families who rely on community health centers, teaching health centers, and other critical health care investments will continue to get the health care that they need. Now, I'm very glad we were able to pass the extension of children's health care, but now we need to work together to tackle those other critical health care issues that Republicans have now allowed to expire. Because there's no excuse for leaving families wondering whether their local health care center will shut its doors, or leaving our medical residents who want to help underserved communities in limbo, which is happening now. And I know we can put a stop to this uncertainty without gutting other investments in public health care. There are bipartisan solutions on all these challenges and the many that we face. And now that Republicans have stepped back from their completely unnecessary government shutdown and say they are ready to work with us on responsible solutions, we need to tackle these right now, together, without delay. People across the country are going to be holding Republican leaders accountable for their commitments and for their responsibilities, and we will be as well.
Thank you, Senator Murray. Senator Stabenow.
Thank you. Let me just stress what Senator Murray was talking about in terms of the Children's Health Insurance Program. We started in the Finance Committee with a bipartisan bill in order to make sure that the Children's Health Insurance Program did not expire by September 30th, and to put that in place. And then I came to the floor, other members of our caucus came to the floor week after week after week, 114 days before children's health insurance was reauthorized. But the good news is, instead of a 2-year reauthorization, as has happened the last time around, we were able to get 6 years of full funding with increases, and that is a real victory for children and families in Michigan and all across the country, 9 million children across the country. But we've got a lot of unfinished business to do, including now the second piece, which is community health centers. The refusal to act means that 25 million people across our country, including 300,000 veterans, right now, and 7.5 million children right now, find their health center in jeopardy because Republicans would not do what we have traditionally done, which is reauthorize CHIP and community health centers at the same time. And so we have children in Michigan, 225,000 in fact. A third of our children go to health centers. A third of the people going to health centers are children, and so we're in a situation where you may have the health insurance, but the health center's closed. You can't see your doctor. So that's very, very high on our list. Democrats are focused on making sure we get that done as soon as possible for the 25 million people who count on community health centers across our country. We are also very focused on our veterans, as Senator Murray focused on, Senator Schumer talked about. Our veterans shouldn't stand in the back of any line, and certainly not for health care, which has been promised to them. And I want to focus on infrastructure. We have veterans clinics in Michigan that are too small to meet the demand for services, hospitals that need to be renovated to be able to care for our veterans. We are focused on doing everything we can for our veterans, including mental health services as well. And finally, in the middle of an opioid epidemic that's destroying families and communities across our country, any budget agreement has to have important funding to fight opioids and not leave our families and communities behind. There have been short-term deals for too long. The job needs to get done long-term. That's what we were focused on. Commitments, of course, for children covered by DACA, and also to make sure that the funding priorities that the American people, middle-class families, working families, expect us to come forward with for them get achieved. It's time to come together, get things done for our families, our veterans, and our communities.
Thank you. Last but not least, Senator Sherrod Brown.
Thanks, Leader Schumer. We've watched over the last 13 months right around the corner insurance company lobbyists and Wall Street lobbyists and drug company lobbyists and oil company lobbyists scurry in and out of Senator McConnell's office trying to write a health care repeal law, trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act, giving away a tax break to the richest Americans. More than 80% of that tax cut goes to the wealthiest 1%, and we know that tax law will actually mean more companies will shut down in Cleveland and Mansfield and Zanesville and move overseas. There's even more incentives to do that. Yet at the same time, as those lobbyists scurry in and out of Senator McConnell's office, a Republican House, a Republican Senate, a Republican President, a Republican Supreme Court, they've still not been able to run this government with any kind of long-term budget. At the same time, they've ignored the pension needs of literally over 1 million Americans, Teamsters, carpenters, iron workers, mine workers, confectionery workers, literally over 1 million workers, 50,000 Teamsters in my state alone, another 5,000 coal miners in my state alone. These are people, and I know this is Econ 101 for some of my colleagues, but what they don't want to think about, because they don't really ever go to a union hall, is to understand that these are workers over the last 20 and 30 and 40 years that sat down at the bargaining table and gave up higher wages today to put money aside for pensions 20, 30 years down the road. Well, what's happened is Wall Street, in large part, squandered a lot of that money. So these workers that work 40 years, they don't expect a 40% pension cut. That's why this is so important. That's what we need to do. I was encouraged over the weekend. I had lots of conversations with colleagues both sides of the aisle. I had a meeting in my office with several senators talking about the importance of what we can do with pensions. This is not a partisan issue. I assume that when I speak to Teamster rallies or mine worker rallies in Ohio, that just as many of them voted for Trump as voted for Clinton. I don't care about that. These are Ohio workers. These are Ohio retirees. It's time we did our job and fixed it.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Nancy, go ahead.
These progressive groups that say you should have held out for more, do they have a point?
Well, look, we're very pleased with how things came out. We're a lot better off today when it comes to the cause of Dreamers than we were 4 or 5 days ago. We've gotten a commitment from Senator McConnell, trust but verify, but he made it not just to Democrats, but to a good chunk of his own caucus. So that means a lot. And I think we have renewed momentum. The Dreamer issue, which everyone supported, but is much more highlighted. So we're very pleased with how it worked out. When there's a Republican president, a Republican Senate, a Republican House that are quite recalcitrant against Dreamers, you're not going to get it all at once, but we're going to keep fighting, and we believe we will have a good victory. Look, we're going to try to get them all done together. Leader McConnell has said that. We've said that. We'd like to get them all done. We think we can.
What about hearing a lot in the past day or so here about the FBI and these texts? Do you view that as an effort on the other side of the aisle to try to pull attention away
Yes.
from the Mueller review?
I think there has been a great deal of activity on the other side intending to either divert attention from Mueller or even stand in his way. I don't think that Mr. Nunes has played a constructive role, to say the least, and we're all worried about it. Mueller has to be allowed to do his job. I have faith in him. As long as he goes forward, everyone will abide by where he comes down. But he shouldn't be thwarted in any way, and the diversion that they're trying to do, both with Mueller and with others, is not good for the country. Yes, way in the back. Because that was part of a package. It was the first thing the President and I talked about was finishing it by, as he said, Tuesday night, 3 days. And the thought was that we could come to an agreement that afternoon. The President would announce his support, and then the Senate and House would get it done, and it would be on the President's desk. He didn't do that. So we're going to have to start on a new basis, and the wall offer is off the table. I think we advanced the ball for the Dreamers. We're proud of the role we played. If they're proud of the role of thwarting Dreamers, most Americans would disagree with that. Last one. I think we ought to get to the bottom of it. I would leave the investigation to Mueller and not second guess it, and to the legal attorneys after they review President's actions, whether he did obstruct. But certainly the American people overwhelmingly think Mueller ought to be allowed to do his job. And there are a whole lot of forces in the Republican firmament trying to stop him from doing his job. That is not what America is all about. No person is above the law. Thank you.